Hello everyone and welcome to another very nice game. A lot of you have been requesting since it happened yesterday in the round 6 of the US Chess Championship. It's Sevian versus Fabiano Caruana, and both of them were having a pretty good tournament. They both lost one game. Sevian in round 5 lost Lenderman, and Caruana, of course, in the game that we've shown to Daniel Naroditsky. Here, Fabi has the black pieces. He's going to try to bounce back, and we have the 4 knights opening. So that's going to be very enjoyable. Let's check it out as Samuel opens with e4. We have e5 by Fabi, knight to f3, knight to c6, and now knight to c3. We have knight to f6, going for the 4 knights game. Interestingly, knight to c3 is the 3 knights game, or the 3 knights opening, but no one ever plays anything here other than knight to f6. So I don't think anyone ever played anything here other than knight to f6, because it's so enjoyable seeing all of the 4 knights out this early on the board. And okay, we have d4 by Sevian, and Fabi goes for e captures on d4, and now knight captures on d4. If you remember, the game is from the 1952 Second Soviet Team Cup that Mikhail Tal played against Yuri Averbakh. We've mentioned this game many times. It's the game that won Mikhail Tal his Grandmaster title. He played knight to d5. This is the so-called Belgrade Gambit, and it's very, very complicated, and there's a lot of horsing around. Averbakh played knight to b4, then Tal captured on d4, then Averbakh captured on e4, and look at this. I mean, it's a complete mess. Remind me to show this game one time, because it's just very enjoyable. But okay, after e captures on d4, we have knight captures on d4. This is the most common reply here. The Belgrade Gambit is still being played even today in 2021, but this is played much more often. So bishop to b4, pinning the knight, and now knight captures on c6. We have b captures on c6, and now bishop to d3. So Sevian continues development, as there was the threat of just eliminating the knight and picking up this pawn. Maybe you never want to try something like this because you might lose your knight, but okay, queen to e7 can be played, and then it's fine. So both players just castles, and now d6 by Fabi. We have bishop to g5, pinning the knight, and now h6. Fabi not afraid, he's gonna go all the way. We have g5, bishop to g3, and now the position has been reached before. Rook to e8 is a known move, bishop g4 is a known move, some other moves are also known, but here we have queen to e7 by Fabi, and it is as of move 11 that we have a completely new game. So let's see how Sevian continues. The e4 pawn is still being pressured. We could always just capture the knight and then pick up the pawn. However, he offers the pawn. He plays knight to a4. Now, can you really capture this pawn? Well, you could. For example, knight captures on e4. We can play rook to e1 because the bishop covers that. But then we play c3, we kick away the bishop, but then of course black doesn't move the bishop. Black just captures on g3. For example, f captures on g3, and if now bishop to a5, we can bring our queen to f3, bring this rook to e1, and we have full development basically. Okay, we have a funny knight on a4, but other than that, we're very good here. The queen and the bishop are doing a fine job. White should be better here, but it's hard to say. Of course, black has the bishop pair. So it's a very tricky position. However, after knight to a4, Fabi doesn't go for this. He goes bishop to a5. He wants to shift the bishop over to this diagonal right away. c3. Now, of course, the pawn cannot be captured, because if now knight captures pawn, then rook to e1 just wins. If, for example, d5, we're going to play b4, and after bishop to b6, we can simply eliminate the bishop, and after something captures f3, just wins the knight. So that can be played. b4 also prevents something like queen to c5 check. So instead, after c3, we have bishop back to b6 right away, and now Sevian just captures. We have knight captures, a captures, and the queen to e2. Now the pawn is nicely defended, and the bishop to g4, attacking Samuel's queen on e2. The bishop is developed, the rooks are connected, and the queen to e3 now. Knight to h5, going after the bishop. Also, maybe f5 is an idea in some lines. You have to be careful. d5 also. So here we have f4 by white, and now Fabi has to figure out how to go about this position. Fabi plays d5 here, and it's a very active move, but it's a very, very dangerous move. A safer move would be just moving back the bishop with something like bishop to d7 or even bishop to c8, but it's hard to understand why right away. We're gonna get to this, but just in case you guys are interested, after bishop to d7, it doesn't matter. For example, if f captures, h captures, and that's it. the position is fine. However, after Fabi played d5, now it's a completely different story. Now we have f captures on g5, and now you can no longer play h captures on g5, because by playing d5 you opened up this diagonal, and now the c7 bishop is hanging. So we can just capture it, and now what do you do here? If queen captures, we can simply capture this. And now do you see the problem of this bishop being on g4? Yeah, that's the problem. Once the king moves, we're just gonna pick it up. So after f captures on g5, we have knight captures on g3 by Fabi, queen captures on g3, and queen captures on g5. So now what do you do? Of course, we chase the queen back. We have h4, queen to g7. You can't really put the queen on a light square, because then e5 or captures just opens up a discovery. So queen captures on c7, grabbing that pawn, and now Samuel is ready to start picking off all of those pawns. We have d4 by Fabi, hoping for a nice captures, but here we just have c4. We have rook f to c8, going after Fabi's queen, after Samuel's queen, and now not going for b6, because if we capture this, then rook 8 to b8, then we go after the b2 pawn. So you don't want to activate the black's pieces, you want to keep them at bay. So queen back to d6, and now we have c5. So nicely defending everything, and as always, if queen captures, we can just play this, pick up the b2 pawn. So now Fabi has a passed d4 pawn, and it could be very dangerous. But here comes rook to f6, going after the h6 pawn, but now Fabi plays bishop to h3. Now it's Fabi who's threatening checkmate here. Rook to f2, only good move to prevent this, and now king to h8. Fabi doesn't care about any pawns here, he just wants to play rook to g8 and continue the attack against the white king. And here a defensive move like queen to h2 to kick away the bishop can be played definitely, but Sevian just plays queen captures on b6. And this is beautiful, because he just tells Fabi, do your thing, it doesn't work. And that's, to someone like Fabi, that's a pretty big thing to say. So here Fabi goes rook to g8. Now, seemingly threatening bishop captures on g2, but not really. Here we have e5, and e5 is such a beautiful defensive attacking idea that, well, you just have to see it to believe it. Now comes rook 8 to e8, and I know what you guys are wondering. You're wondering, but why not bishop captures on g2? Well, that's an excellent question, but it's also the one that you will have to answer for yourselves. So feel free to pause the video and win the game for white while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on solving this incredible hypothetical situation. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's rook captures on f7. Now you see the power of the e5 move and how black is completely helpless here. There are no discoveries, because wherever you move the bishop, we just win the queen. If you play something like queen captures on f7, then queen captures on h6 check, queen has to block, only move, and then queen captures on h7 is checkmate. And even if you don't capture the rook, if you move the queen somewhere, doesn't really matter where, then even the rook to h7 is checkmate. The bishop nicely covers the h7 square. So this is the idea behind the queen captures on b6. It wasn't just a pawn grab, it was a pawn grab that said, Fabi, your rook to g8 idea is, it's just nothing. But of course he has to try. So rook 8 to e8, he continues, and now rook to e1. Nicely defending this pawn. We have f5 now. Now by playing f5 you've blocked the light square bishop, and now you have to be careful. Now bishop captures on g2 is definitely a threat, and here we have bishop back to f1, nicely defending that g2 pawn twice. Now we have f4. Fabi now wants to play f3 and open up white's king side, but now even queen captures on c5, saying I'm just gonna grab another pawn, you've got nothing here. Fabi has to keep trying. He pushes f3, but now just e6. And I mean, what is this? He's allowing Fabi whatever Fabi wants, but it's just not enough. Fabi plays f captures on g2. Interestingly, if bishop captures on g2, you also don't care. You just capture, and after pawn captures, and now you're going to use Fabi's own pawn as a shield. You're going to play e7, and there is no move that black can make here. This is completely lost for black, even though it kind of looks nice. You have a pass pawn here, you have a pass pawn here, you have a nicely doubled queen-rook battery here on the g file, but whatever you do, it's just game over. Or rather, there's no move you can make. The queen has to keep an eye on the d4 pawn. The rook can't really move. This rook doesn't have anywhere to go. If you just make a king move, queen d5, and now rook f7 is coming. I mean, it's king h8 to prevent this. You're still gonna play rook f7, and if the queen moves, just queen e5 check, and that's game over. For example, rook g7, rook to f8 with check, hoping to get a queen into the game, and now after king h7, even h5, taking away the last square from the queen to defend the rook on e8, and that's it. Completely winning from Sevian. So Fabi can't capture with the bishop, he captures with the pawn here, but now we just move the bishop, and the idea is the same. We're going to use our opponent's pawn to help us defend our own king. So here, bishop captures on e6, eliminating another pawn, and now queen to e5. Sevian offers a queen trade. There was a quicker way to win the game with something like rook f to e2, but it's a tricky move, and how do you defend the bishop? Of course, you can't really just move the bishop and trade everything. We're up material, so we're gonna win the endgame. We can just start pushing our pawns, and we don't really care. And you can't move the queen. This is hanging. You can't really defend it. You could play something like queen g4 now to try and keep an eye on everything. But then bishop f5, for example, completely crushing. There's no move black can make here. So, you know, there was that in the position. But okay, after queen to e5, offering a queen trade, Fabi, I think, happily traded. Queen captures, rook captures, and now bishop to h3. Continues to defend his, well, beautiful pass pawn on g2. Rook to e4, now going after this pawn, and now Fabi trades with rook captures. And maybe this capture was a bit premature, because it only helps white get another attacker onto that g2 pawn. So maybe waiting a little bit, but it's a really difficult position, and it's still only move 35. We have to reach move 40 to gain more time for time control. So rook captures on e4 was played, bishop captures, and now there's really no way to defend this. Fabi plays d3. He offers this pawn to make to try and make this pawn last a little bit longer. Bishop captures on d3, and now rook to e8, trying to create some problems here. But now bishop to e2. You could also play rook e2. Bishop to e2 is a bit more classy. King to g7, and now a4. Now those three pass pawns are just monsters, and it's not going to be easy stopping them. So now you could go for rook to b8, go after this pawn, but the bishop just moves. The pawn is defended. We're going to capture this pawn, so not a lot here. You could continue like something like rook to b4. We're going to capture on g2, and now it doesn't really matter. If you capture, we're going to capture, and now you could capture one pawn, but it's not enough. And also you're in check. You have to move the king, and then, you know, we just continue pushing. So it's too many pawns. It's simply too many pawns. So after rook this move, we have rook to e3 by Fabi, and now a5. You don't have to worry about rook to a3. The b2 pawn prevents this. Rook to e5 going after the pawn. Now comes b4. On move 41, we have rook to e3, and now rook to f3. And it was in this position on move 42 that Fabiano Caruana resigned the game, and a wonderful and incredible win for Samuel Sevian. So here you can see that it wasn't so much of Fabi trying to go for more as it might have seemed in the game against Naroditsky. He was just completely outplayed here by Sevian in this four knights opening. So yeah, I mean, the four knights of the apocalypse, right? Again, it would seem. But it's such an impressive game, and he just allowed Fabi to do whatever Fabi wants, but it simply wasn't enough. There was nothing he could do, and here you don't really have a move. If you trade rooks, for example, captures, then who's going to stop those pawns? Your bishop is just a monster here guarding all of these squares. And if you trade minor pieces, also doesn't really matter. You could capture this, rook captures here. I mean, it's still 4 pawns to 2. This is 2 winning. I mean, you just have to put the rook behind any of those pawns and just push it, and you know, you don't even need a winning plan to win this. So yeah, after rook to f3, Fabi resigned, and an incredible victory for Samuel Sevian in this round 7 of the US Chess Championship. So currently the leaders are Alexander Lenderman and Ray Robson, followed by Wesley So, Dominguez, and Samuel Sevian here with 3.5 points. The leader have 4 points, so a lot could still happen. We'll see. But from the favorites, Wesley So is definitely still in the race. Fabi, I think, now is definitely out of the race, but you know, we'll see. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Really an impressive one on so many levels. That trick where he allowed Fabi to just, I mean, it's beautiful. It's just amazing here, where he allowed this bishop to g2. You have to find this. Queen captures b6, e5, and then to allow this. I mean, you really have to find this. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this. I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Ayad Habib, and I would like to thank Tom Kerr, Tom Deralo, Francis Air, and Mr. Hoodie Guy for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the US Chess Championship, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.